Welcome into another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sideline.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of Tight Pants Society.
No f***ing way is that a gimme, right?
So we moved things up a little early today because we're so excited for this edition of Gas, Gresh Anik Morning Drive. How the hell are you across America? Watching us on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, anywhere you can watch, you can pretty much get us. And Jason Anik is grinning away because we have a lot to peel through, and we'll get to take a ride on the roller coaster again. Whee! Red Sox baseball.
So if you're wondering why I'm grinning, and I'm glad I'm not on mute, it's for multiple reasons. First reason is when Cody plays the open and then you start, right? Today was one of those days where you started just at the absolute perfect time, right? So I'm seeing the end of the graphic. I'm hearing your pipes, and it just sort of got me fired up. That's the reason for my smile right now. But also, you know me well enough to know that in the pre-show, I like to not say much because I don't like to steal the bullets. So you started to get into stuff, and I didn't even give you a reaction because I want to hear it on the show. We got a nice collared shirt on Gresh today. Cody pointed out you're going to tee it high and let it fly. We're talking.
I got a golf
pre-show now.
Yeah, I got a golf tournament that I have to go to today. It's the father-in-law's golf tournament for his company. At Rhode Island Country Club, where they play like the CVS Charity Classic and stuff like that. So nice course, got the cigars ready to go. And I know you and I are going to shake it up a little bit when we as we start today's show here about our sort of top story in sports. And I never thought that I would be the one bringing up the Red Sox as my top story right now. And it's as much about the Red Sox as it is the run that the Cleveland Guardians have gone on, Jay. They've won. Every time I turn around and I look at the standings, it says they've won 9 of 10. You know, so even if there's a loss slid in there, they're still on a massive streak as Cleveland, to where now they've almost caught up to Detroit in the AL Central, but they've caught up to Houston, who is now the third wild card. As you and I sit here this morning, we would get a Red Sox-Yankees wild card round matchup the way it's set right now. But, Jay, there still is the chance that the Red Sox could absolutely fill the back of their britches with Cleveland so hot and not make the playoffs.
When Cody asked us each to come up with our top story, and I knew we were going to talk about the Red Sox later in the program, but it doesn't surprise me that you and I landed on the same thing. It's just unbelievable. Like the American League playoff picture. And for those of you like me that aren't necessarily huge baseball fans, go take a peek because this last week is going to be absolutely riveting, right? So the Guardians, as you mentioned, right? One game back of the Tigers. They lost on Sunday, but prior had won 10 straight. 15 of 16. Meanwhile, the Tigers, who were really front running in the American League, especially with the New York Yankees stumbling at certain stretches, Tigers are on a free fall, having lost 6 in a row, 9 of 10. Cleveland and Detroit begin a 3-game set in Cleveland tonight, which is just fascinating. And so the Tigers, who have lost 6 in a row, finish at Cleveland and at Boston. These Red Sox-Tigers games, these 3 games to close out the season very well could be for wild card implications. And most certainly you are correct that while the Red Sox look like the playoffs were somewhat of a shoo-in maybe a week to 10 days ago, the fly in the ointment is the Cleveland Guardians.
No question. Cleveland got hot as a pistol, and for the Tigers, I know it was like 2 weeks ago they lost Tarek Skubal, but more than that, they were the team who were they were 25 games, I think, above 500 when it came to the All-Star break, and now they're not even going to hit 90 at the end of the year, which is kind of amazing. And look, in terms of the Red Sox, it feels like it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Sometimes they get a good start, then the bullpen blows it, and then you can't come through in a big offensive situation. Or you put a bunch of runs up, and then the pitching can't hold on to it. Or you get a gem, and you don't score any runs. It just feels like the Red Sox have kind of invented ways to lose, and they also haven't had the benefit of the really soft schedule. There were some A's thrown in there, But, when you're playing Tampa and you're playing Detroit, you're playing teams that have pulses, heartbeats, and pride. They're not just going to roll over and hand you the win. So what we thought was, you're right, kind of a shoo-in. Now down to the final week, we have not only the American League Central up for grabs, but it could end up Houston and Cleveland in the wild card with the Yankees when it's all said and done. That's how nutty this can get.
Sure, it could be, and Houston, Detroit, Cleveland could win the division. It's bananas. Right. And your roller coaster thing that you've done all year, which makes me laugh, you did it at the beginning of this episode. What's kind of interesting for me is, that I've been along for the ride and very excited about the Red Sox. But over the last, I feel like the Roman Anthony really took like almost all the air out of my balloon. We talk about a roller coaster, right? And I have daughters age 8 and 11. And since they are brave with roller coasters, finally their old dad goes on roller coasters. I used to be the guy holding all the purses. You know what I mean? When everyone went on the roller coaster.
I love roller coasters. I just don't fit on them anymore.
But what I will say is, I feel like in terms of the Red Sox, I'm going to be the guy holding the purses. It's very difficult for me to get juiced, even if they make the playoffs, right? To your point, finding different ways to lose games, it's hard for me to imagine them going on some magical run. But what I've said all along is, if they peak in the right way, hey, if you want to win 5 or 6 against Toronto and Detroit, maybe you could have a little juice with Crochet getting the ball in game 1. But hard for me to believe too much in this Red Sox team.
Well, and the other thing too, Jay, is if you get in, anybody can win it. That's kind of the craziness about the American League this year, is that, and look at that, right? Just to reach the ALCS, the betting market's liking Seattle right now. For the Red Sox, it's right, plus 650. If Cleveland gets in, they all they got to do is stay hot for 2 more weeks and they're in the ALCS. And that's sort of I think that's the tug for Red Sox fans a little bit, Jay, is if you get in, anybody can win it. And you would go into this postseason not really believing that this team could go on a run. But if it happened, it wouldn't be completely out of left field, no pun intended, because the American League is wide open. Toronto's got the best record in the American League, and they're only plus 110 to reach the American League Championship Series. So that kind of tells you the uneasiness in the American League and some of the unsettledness in the betting market as well.
Great stuff there. And with a wild year in the Bronx, if I'm a Yankees fan, I'm really happy sitting here today, right? You sort of had Judge was injured. You had a great beginning of the year. You fell very flat, but getting hot at the right time. I think the Yankees have a really good chance to perhaps peak. And Cody, if you get a chance, peak at the World Series number. I may put a little tickle on the Yankees to win the whole thing, because they're certainly going to get in this tournament. And I think they have a chance to really get to that sort of right peak at the right time. But anyway,
I think the thing for them, Jay, is that this is a pretty easy week for them. Even if they lost 6 in a row, I think the math would still say they're probably going to get in, and they're not going to lose 6 in a row. But, Boston's got to grind to the very end. Houston and Detroit and Cleveland are going to grind to the very end. If you're the Yankees, you're kind of sitting pretty right now, where you're really waiting to see which of these teams that are all eminently beatable to the Yankees that they end up really playing in the first round. And then kind of where does it, go from there? I think the Yankees match up pretty well against Toronto. Seattle is the one team, Jay, that kind of, I'm not afraid of them, don't get me wrong, but they have the magical player having the magical season in Cal Raleigh. And he's the kind of bat that you could pitch around him twice, but the one time you pitch to him, he bonds you and drives it 440 feet down the right field line. So that's what sort of makes me nervous about Seattle. If it is Boston and Seattle in the wild card round, is that they have the one player having the one season that, that only like Ohtani can touch this year. But at the end of the day, I think the Red Sox getting in, like, we need to peel back to the very beginning, Jay, I think, to remind ourselves that if the Red Sox ended up an 85-win team, we would be really happy with that. And they're at 85 right now. Yep. And now it's just a matter of whether they're going to make the playoffs or not, which would be disappointing if they didn't. But if we go back to the beginning of the year, we would chalk this up to being a successful season.
I agree. And I know we're going to talk about football, but the Patriots couldn't happen but enter my mind here, because ultimately, even when I look at a game like Sunday with the Patriots coming out on the losing end, to me, there's more positives than negatives coming out, because I don't believe this is their year. So in the same context of the Red Sox, right? For whatever this new future of the Red Sox holds, and I know you don't like the ownership, I don't believe this is their year. I don't believe this is the Patriots' year. So I can go along for the ride and not be so connected to the results.
Yeah, I think at the end of the season, however it ends, we'll end up looking back and seeing that there were a lot of positives. And maybe they're selling a bill of goods on some of these guys, but hey, for this year, if they end up with 88 wins and they make the playoffs, you can't argue really with the results. So it's interesting that the Red Sox were both our top story. Because, I don't know, like, what team do you find yourself rooting for or sort of watching on Sunday? I know that we both watched the Patriots against the Steelers. I was in the house at Gillette Stadium to take it all in. It was an interesting crowd. It wasn't half and half. Don't get me wrong. There were probably 25% Steeler fans there. There were some terrible towels in the house, no question.
So much to take away from this game. So I'll just start where I already just started. For me, so much more good than bad, right? Yes, I want to talk about Rhamondre Stevenson, but I got to just start with Drake Maye. Kid is just so special, so much more good than bad. The turnovers are what they are, right? But, we said last year we got this kid. I love the decision-making. I love the instincts. It can absolutely do it all. Every game he does things that amaze me. I just love the juice of this team. They're on the field all day long. Regardless of the result of the game, I enjoyed watching thoroughly, again, because I'm not that tied to the result. They're living on the field. You think Josh McDaniels had a good day calling plays? So I'm going to start with the positive. Man, I think the future's bright.
Well, I think when you look at what they're doing offensively right now, and I know for TV this week, one of my keys against Pittsburgh was attack the linebackers. And that's what they did. It was a lot of the crossing route type stuff where May was floating it over the shoulder of somebody, where there was a linebacker running, trying to catch up to Hunter Henry or, one of the inside slot receivers. I think what they've done is they have simplified the passing game a little bit by keeping it much more short to intermediate. I don't think there is sort of the want or maybe the push from the coaching staff of let's hit some people with play action and try to get the ball down the field. I'm not saying they do want to get the ball down the field, don't get me wrong, but I think they're sort of taking their time with it, right? If the right thing opens up and McDaniels can call the right play, it's not as much the 15 or more yard throws for May as it is the 5 to 15 yard throws right now for Drake Maye. And the one thing that I hope I'm not being duped on this, okay? I'd be really pissed if I get him duped on this. But even though they're moving Drake Maye out of the pocket, I think the pocket presence and the want to run of him like holding his water and trying to let a play develop, I think he's getting better at that. And even Jay on those rollout plays, he's waiting. And then if it isn't there, then it's I'm going to tuck it and get up the field. So I like from the patience standpoint, from the pocket presence, I think you could see May taking steps. There's still a long way for him to go, especially in the pocket. What I'd love for him to learn is the Brady stuff. And we talked about it last week. Up, back, left, right. If they can do that in the small space and get Drake Maye moving that way in the pocket while keeping the eyes downfield, then you really got something. But the kid's growing every week.
Great stuff. I agree with all of that. What's interesting about the last thing you said about inside the pocket, I do feel when the offensive line improves, potentially you can see some of that, right? This kid's playing pretty well when things are collapsing often, and he's sort of making a really nice play where things are kind of breaking down in front of him. One thing I wanted to ask you about, did you see the play? I think it was in the second quarter where Drake Maye went down, seemed to hit the back of his head on the ground and sort of put his hands on his helmet.
He brought his hand to his head. Yeah.
So UFC producer Zach Candido texted my brother and I, it's in this Boston group chat, saying, yeah, we're not going to see Drake in the second half. And when I saw that, my thought was, yeah, like if they caught this or if they didn't want to push it under the rug, that very well could be the case. Because if you're doing that, right, you know, the vast range of the spectrum of concussions, right? But definitely bang the noggin a little bit and has been a proponent. You know, it's not the first time it's happened to this kid in his young career. So I just want to know if you saw that and had any thoughts.
No, I did. And I would say to everybody on that, watch the next play. Because if a quarterback is sort of like dizzy or lightheaded, or, you know, they took one on the bean, they're going to have a hard time on the next play, because you have to spit it out in the huddle before you even get out of the huddle. And, you know, granted, there are some shorter, you know, you could get 0 out slot J right, and that's a pretty easy play call. But with McDaniels, a lot of them are wordy. And I think it just wouldn't be, you know, right 4, so that they can shorten it down and the kid just turn around and hands it off. So I always tell people that if you think somebody got dinged, if they are really foobarred, I played a game once at Delaware and I got hit so hard and they brought me to the sideline and they said, "Where are you?" I said, "Earth." Wasn't a wrong answer, and I bickered with them. I was like, "Am I wrong?" And they're like, "What city are you in?" And I'm like, had no idea, right? My best friend Nelson, he got crowned under the chin. We had a passing play. This was like a year earlier at Delaware. It's a pass play. He fires out run blocks and knocks the shit out of somebody, but he's a legal man downfield on a play that actually worked. So if you're really foobarred, it'll show up right away in the next play. And I didn't think it really did. Now, I know that ultimately, you know, when Maye throws the interception, people are like, "Oh, he's wobbly," or the ball got tipped or whatever. I don't think so. I
agree.
He took a hit to the head, but to me, you get hit in the head all the time, or are you foobarred? And he was not foobarred, in my opinion.
I agree. And everything I saw after that, to your point, he looked like he was present in the moment. It's just in this era of precautionary behavior when it comes to concussions, which I fully support, you do wonder a little bit if at times, you know, you might overcross it and be like, "Oh, get the kid in the blue tent. He banged his head. He put his head. That's it." You know, but I'm with you.
I'll tell you what it is, Jay. And this is the best way I can describe how the culture has changed. 30 years ago, even in college, they would wave, you know, they would ask you questions like they would me, like they knew I was, you know, loopy as all hell, right? But if you're pretty close, they hit you with the old smelling salts, and then you wake up and you're like, "Oh my God." And you just went back out there and you played. In the 90s, you couldn't say, "Hey, I don't feel right." You couldn't raise your hand and say, "Hey, I don't feel right up here." It's like, fine, take some smelling salts or tough it up, whatever, and get your ass back out there. Now, when guys raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'm not right," they take it seriously now. Before, you know, 30 years ago, you got mocked for it. Now there's someone there to, you know, take you into the room and make sure you're not, you know, either lightheaded or that light sensitive or anything like that. So that is, I'll tell you what, haven't had a really bad one. That is the one thing about the concussion that sets in right away. The whole light sensitivity thing, not fun.
Very interesting. So I assume you've tried smelling salts in your life?
100%. I'm a big believer in them.
Yeah, and so is George Kittle. And at the beginning of this season, they outlawed them. And Kittle's like, "What do you mean? I'm banging those before every offensive possession." What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know what they did was the NFL said it was banned, but players are still allowed to like bring it. So Kittle goes and buys a case of it. He's still okay. I think you're not supposed to do it like in front of team personnel or something like that. You know, like you go to the hopper 30 minutes before the game and you're sitting in the can and you're cracking the thing and like, whoa, you're trying to get all fruity whipped up and stuff like that. No, they figured it out. It's just like all of I call them the doll shots. Do you know about the Toradol, the Teractadol, the whatever doll shots? They'll just numb you up, you know. "Oh man, my elbow's barking. Oh, let me give you a little Toradol," and it won't go numb on you. You'll be able to play, but you won't feel it until tomorrow when you can't bend your arm, right? It's that there's all the doll shots in the NFL that they've allegedly tried to cut down on which is horse shit. You know, Pat Mahomes says, give me the needle. No one's going to go, Mr. Mahomes, I'm worried about your long-term health. Yeah. They're like, yeah, we're the Chiefs. We need to fucking win. Needle them up and get them out there.
So staying on the Patriots, right? So Rhamondre Stevenson, right? And I do believe the culture of the NFL in terms of guys punching at footballs, right? You can ask Derrick Henry, who's fumbled in 3 straight games. And I know we'll get to the week 3 recap, but I think it's harder than ever as a back. Sometimes, inevitably, the defensive player is just going to make a play that's too good, and you sometimes can't catch it. But Rhamondre Stevenson, right? These fumbles, it's not as if someone's necessarily getting great contact on the ball. It's not a priority. It's not as if he's holding a little child that could go off into the ocean if you don't hold it. The priority for squeezing the football just doesn't seem to be there. And unfortunately for Mike Vrabel and the coaching staff, Rhamondre Stevenson is the most effective back right now in 2025 for the New England Patriots. And they're tying the coach's hands because you can't give him the football if he's going to spit it up twice.
Not everybody tackles the ball the way the Steelers do. I think that is something to mention. Like, there are times where they have poor technique. Like that guy number 40 who knocked that one out of Rhamondre's hands. That guy's like making a tackle and his head is down with like the back part of his neck exposed, so that if that guy took like a knee, he'd be like knocked in the next week. And I think that was Peppers flying around in there trying to knock that ball out. The Steelers always tackle the football, but here's the thing with Rhamondre. The one thing I loved that Vrabel did was he sat him for a series. He let him know, hey, I'm willing to work with you. I can deal with one mistake. Don't make 2. And then sat him down for a series, and then Gibson gets in there, and then he fumbles. So, and then Drake Maye had another fumble as well. It became an epidemic. One led to another, led to another, led to another, and it even spread to the other running backs. Like if there were 2 fumbles by May and then 2 by Stevenson, you could really pile on Stevenson. But the fact that they got Gibson for 1, like that's the one to put me over the edge.
Well, I hear you. And Drake Maye does still get a little bit of a pass from me in terms of some of these turnovers, in terms of the youth. Like if we're talking about this next year with Drake Maye, like totally inexcusable. But Rhamondre Stevenson, man, it's like, yeah, and he sits him for a series or 2. I'm not sure exactly what happened. And obviously the second fumble, but it really, to me, look at what he did last week against Miami. And like he's really, really sucking the value out of himself as a football player. It's really disappointing to watch.
I don't expect this is going to be one of those things to continue. I think it happens early. Bill cleaned it up with Rhamondre, and I think Vrabel is going to hold him to at least that standard in terms of him getting out there. Like there's no free pass for Rhamondre in this instance, Jay. I think the one thing you can take solace in is that if it does continue, there are other backs that can get it done, and Vrabel's not afraid to go to those guys. And even D. Henry, I'll tell you what, Jay, it also does make me wonder about the footballs and how they're preparing them, because everyone thinks about the kickers and the quarterbacks. No one thinks about the running backs, because if the ball is slick, it makes it that much easier for that thing to get out. When Derrick Henry is getting the ball knocked out, that at least I have to ask the question, because a guy like Henry normally doesn't put the pill on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's mental. Did you see Derrick Henry when he goes to the sideline? Like, I don't think it's a football. You see Derrick Henry when he goes to the sideline and that little sort of fit, and then the look in his eyes, like mentally, he looks compromised. Cody put in the chat, in his time with the Patriots, Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis carried the football 510 times, 29 touchdowns, fumbled 0 times. Like, I believe with Rhamondre Stevenson and Derrick Henry, it's in their head right now. And Gresh, go back if you don't mind. I know you're a busy man. You're going to be teeing it high today. Go watch Mondre's first fumble. It's not credit to the Steelers. It's him not being mentally focused on carrying that like it's a little child. Like, it's ridiculous. And I really do believe, even though you got Gibson and you got Travion Henderson there, Rhamondre is almost at that height of that prime, right? He really is should be the bell cow. No matter
He's the power back.
He is. And I'm not necessarily a Rhamondre guy, but if he can fix this, I mean, I believe the outcome of that game is different. Not even if he only fumbles once, but just being able to stay on the field, because he just provided a difficulty for the Steelers defense and the other 2 backs did not.
Well, I think the thing about Rhamondre is if you get that touchdown at bare minimum, that definitely changes the game. And then the kid piles on by throwing an interception on a tip ball and stuff like that. I think that's the real part of the growth of this team is all right, somebody screwed up. All right, well, somebody came in and screwed up worse than that. And you ended up you ended up like losing the ball. You lost the possession. But hopefully everybody grows together. Bill Campbell hasn't exactly been, seamless in these 3 games, but you know what? They're all growing together. And hopefully at some point later in the year, there is the breakthrough in the big spot where the kid leads him down the field and everybody is a part of it and the left tackle doesn't let anybody get through and that kind of stuff. That's really, now that you're starting to go, because I thought they'd be, I thought there was a chance at the end of this Carolina game this week that it would be 3-1 for this team and them having a chance at the playoffs, but that isn't the case.
And Cody, thank you. And maybe that's the first one, but you see the guy's not even on that side of the ball. It's like you look at some of these running backs and some of these guys that just get drilled all day. And to me, it is, Rhamondre's a lot tougher than me. I'm not trying to call his toughness into question. I believe it's a mental thing, whereas there's certain things to be focused on, and that has to be at the height of his focus. I believe there are moments where he's probably thinking about a cut or looking at a defender and he's not paramountly focused on that squeeze.
Well, I think I think it's harder to practice it now because you're not allowed as much full contact. Like, how do you practice goal line nowadays when you only have 14 padded practices during 17 weeks of a regular season, right? This is your practice. Sadly, you have to just go out and execute it in the game. And I wish they could make it tougher on these guys in terms of holding the football. I want to go back and see those Henry fumbles as well and just take a look to see with what's going on. Yep. Because I know fumbles are up in the first couple of weeks, but we also have defenders now more than ever that are realizing, hey, like if you're getting pushed past the quarterback, reach back and just try to smack the guy and see if that ball comes loose.
Absolutely. And oftentimes as a fan of this sport, I become frustrated watching guys not attempt to make a tackle and simply attempt to knock the ball out, and then it doesn't happen.
That's called the lawyer Malloy. That's all he used to do. They would scream at him all the time. God damn it, rap. Don't just try to hit people. They'd be screaming at him.
So we can shift to our NFL Week 3 recap.
Well, brother, the AFC looks way different than we thought it was going to.
And now it's obviously a young season. Elaborate on that.
All right, so you have the Chargers who are 3-0 in the AFC West. They are now the betting favorite when it was Kansas City all, preseason long. Kansas City is sitting there 1-2. Baltimore is 1-2 after losing to Detroit. Baltimore and Kansas City play each other this week here in week 4 in KC. You have Buffalo, who has a very friendly schedule to when they play the Chiefs in either late October or early November. And I think what Detroit did last night, Jay, was pretty much keep Baltimore out of the opportunity for the number 1 seed. And Cincinnati is a goddamn mess that Joe Burrow ain't there. So I don't believe in Indianapolis, but I think we all thought at the beginning of the year it was really 3 teams in the AFC, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City. Now it might be down to a 2-team race in terms of high-end football between the LA Chargers and the Buffalo Bills.
Well, and if you're a Bills fan, I know there's a lot of football to be played, but you got to be feeling pretty good about yourselves just being able to handle your business with already 2 losses for Baltimore and Kansas City, and one of those teams going to be getting their 3rd loss this weekend. Is that right, Gresh? Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Somebody gets their 3rd.
But what I will say,
and for the Chargers, their 3-0 are against the 3 teams in their division.
Right.
So for them, not only are they off to a great start, they got 3 division wins already in their back pocket when that's going to be a part of the tiebreaker process.
Yep. Very good point. I do think there were a lot of people, me included, that thought the Chiefs might take a step back this year and that maybe it would be Denver that would overtake them or the Chargers. So I believe in Jim Harbaugh a lot. I think that fit with Justin Herbert is perfect. So that doesn't shock me at all. You know, what I'll say about week 3 overall is what I've done the last 2 weeks, I could maybe even say all 3 weeks watching the NFL, is I sit there and we talk about fans of other sports and what people like to watch. And, I don't watch a ton of baseball. But anybody that's not a fan of the National Football League, I just feel sorry for you. And I don't say that to be condescending or anything, because I'm riveted for 2 straight weeks. I mean, you look at these games, right? You know, you're watching the Green Bay Packers throw up all over themselves. Survivor entries go out. You see Cleveland come back and win that game. I'm not even paying attention to what the Jets are doing. These field goal blocks at the end of these games of huge consequence. I'm just watching this league with like a big grin on my face, Gresh.
You know what that Green Bay loss was, brother? That was a huff and methane loss.
Ha! What's that?
Seriously, they were smelling their own farts. Green Bay were standing around smelling their own farts, thinking they were great, and that they were playing Cleveland, and that they did need the A game, and it ended up costing them in the end. That is how do we handle with prosperity? Right? There are some teams who cannot handle prosperity very well. The Green Bay Packers got 2 weeks of it, and they were smelling their own farts in their way to losing to Cleveland, whom they should never lose to.
Well, and up 10-0 with a few minutes left in the game, and Jordan Love throwing that interception. Matt LaFleur on the sidelines, I'm not sure if I've ever seen him that emotional on the sideline. It's very difficult to lose that football game, and Green Bay did it. But McDonald on the Jets, who hopped over the line and blocked that field goal and then picked it up and returned it himself. I mean, that's about as good a play as I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. That's like a Madden play.
Yeah.
You would only really see that in something like that on a video game. Hey, I pulled up the Bills' schedule. Listen to this: Saints, Patriots, Falcons, bye week, Panthers, then Chiefs on November 2nd. Bills in Buffalo. One of Kansas City or Baltimore will have 3 losses next week, and it looks like the Bills are going to be 7-0 going to Kansas City November 2nd. Sorry.
No, I'm so glad you went with the Bills schedule. And I've looked a lot at the Bills schedule this season. Yes, I'm involved in this Survivor contest, but Gresh, like weeks 14, right? For week 14 and 17 for the Bills, you're hosting Cincinnati and you're hosting Philadelphia, right? So I bring it up in this context, Gresh, right? Versus Cincinnati, whether Burrow's there or not, so be it. If Burrow's not there, certainly you like Buffalo. But in week 17, Gresh, it's like Buffalo is putting themselves in position where that game might not matter, hosting the defending Super Bowl champions in week 17, because you've pointed out their schedule since the preseason. And now looking what these other teams are doing. Buffalo, it's not going to shock me at all if they got 1 or 2 losses heading into week 17.
I was just looking at the rest of the schedule after Kansas City. They're going to beat Miami, even though it's at Miami in November. They play Tampa. That'll be a competitive game. Houston's 0-3. What the hell's going on there? Pittsburgh is meh. Cincy is awful. Like, Cincy is going to be really down unless they go get another quarterback.
Awful.
Then Buffalo plays at New England. That might be a little dangerous for Buffalo. I think they'll have to take that seriously. But then they get the Browns and then the Eagles and then the Jets the last week of the year. So to your point, it might be, with the way it's going, it might be I haven't looked at the Chargers schedule just yet, just to see how it lays out for them, Jay. But I think right now it's really the Chargers and the Bills in the AFC, because those other losses are mounting. And I think for Baltimore and Kansas City, if you don't have the number 1 seed, it's going to be real tough to make a run in the playoffs.
You know, I think perhaps, I agree for the most part, but I think perhaps for Baltimore, it wouldn't be the worst thing if they had sort of a funky ride in the postseason where it didn't run through Baltimore. Because if you're telling me fast forward to January and it's Baltimore at the LA Chargers, right? I don't think the Chargers are favored by many. I know there's a lot that has to happen by now, but I do believe in Baltimore if they can get in the tournament, perhaps to make a run out of a lower slot than in the past. Certainly that division's still very winnable for Baltimore, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. No, I would agree. Speaking of a winnable division, we mentioned the Chargers are 3-0 in the AFC West. How about this? They go Giants, Commanders, and then listen to this run. Dolphins, Colts. They get the Vikings, who I don't think are great, and they got, the QB issues or whatever. Tennessee, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville. There's one or two that they're going to lose in there, but if you're the Chargers, that is a pretty favorable schedule. And then they have a late bye. So their bye is week 12, right around Thanksgiving. And then they get Raiders, Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Texans, Broncos, end of the year. So after the bye week, it's definitely tougher. But the early part of the schedule for the Chargers, Jay, they might be able to fatten up here pretty nicely heading into their bye around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean, at the Giants this week, got to think they get that win. But your point about getting those 3 division wins, I think, is huge. So, but I know we're going to, time is flying here, but in terms of week 3,
yeah,
Andrew, did you have any money like me on the Los Angeles Rams in week 3?
I did not.
So for those of us that bet on the Rams plus 3.5, it was such a comically bad beat that it almost didn't even bother me. For those of you that didn't catch the game, right? It was like so incredible. I almost like enjoyed it. One of my friends in college, I'll never forget it. This was a guy who was ahead of his time. He was eating keto, squeezing mayo packets into his mouth like 25 years ago, being like, I can eat whatever I want as long as I don't eat carbs. But this guy used to talk to me about losing bets. And that be what he craved in gambling, was that sort of losing feeling. I'd be like, what? You're out of your mind. But I thought about him because he's from Philadelphia in this game, that the Rams. I'll go to my grave thinking I was on the right side of that game, being on the Rams. I had the Rams on the money line. I had the Rams plus 3.5. If you had told me at some point I wasn't protected against that 3.5, Philly blocks a field goal, they go down. I mean, one of the baddest beats of all time, Gresh, if you had Rams action, I feel.
Oh, no, it really is true. Now, I am ye of little sympathy because I don't wager anything on the Rams with overrated ass Sean McVay. However, I know that even in other, Barry Switzer's got one too. But even in the preseason, when we talked about it, you were talking about how the Rams gave Philly a run in the postseason, and maybe are the team over the past couple of years who's put maybe the biggest scare into them. But yes, in terms of a bad beat, oh my God, now what's the worst beat? The Rams or Penn State up 52-0 against Villanova, and the spread was like 48.5. They were up 52. Nova scores a late touchdown, final 52-6. People ended up losing by like half a point. It was a couple weeks ago. Those are just, I mean, they just rip your heart out. Normally they make people quit gambling, not say, hey, it was so comical, I had to laugh.
Well, it's interesting, right? Like there are a lot of guys that just root to be right all the time. And I promise you, like, I'm in the minority there. I think we're in the content business. I think you create good content when you're sort of wrong about different things. But last year, when Philadelphia went at the Washington Commanders late in the season, my brother and I were opposed in that game. I loved Philadelphia in that game. And Philadelphia looked great doing whatever they want. Jalen Hurts goes out and Washington wins the game. But it's similar here where I was like, gosh, man, my conviction, I felt like I saw the game right and it was a little bit fluky. It is what it is. There's the probability. I like it. Good stuff, Cody. But it was just unbelievable. Everything that transpired in that game, and just the blocked field goals for me, though, yesterday, it's just when teams needed to have it, they did it. And the idea, and what was interesting for me with the Jets blocked field goal, then Tampa Bay comes back at the end of the game and kicks a 36-yarder to win it. No problem making sure you do your job blocking on that particular field goal attempt.
You know what's interesting is I think we had 4 walk-off field goals. What the NFL has done, they've cost themselves money by now making kickers more valuable. I want you to think about something, right? And even like Fourier has told me, yeah, we hate kickers, but you don't realize you don't have one until a guy's out there missing kicks. Think of this. In the last 10 years, they've gone to kickers and said, we're going to monkey around with the way you kick it off. You can't just pound it out of the back of the end zone anymore. So now there's some real nuance to kicking off. We move the extra point back. We dicked around with the hash marks. We've dicked around with the uprights. And now guys are expected to pound them from 60 yards almost on the average, right? That's a guy who scores. And you could argue a kicker scores more for you than a wide receiver does. Not that you're going to pay a kicker $50 million. I'm not losing my mind. But when you think about the context of how important they have now made kickers in the game, that's now a $5, $6, $7 million position when before it was $1 million and you could bring in Nick Folk on the third week of the year and get through the season.
Great stuff. It really matters. You know, when Atlanta's trotting out John Parker Romo against Carolina, I know the score ends up 30-0, but you miss a couple field goals, your mojo's affected. It's huge. My brother John used to say, from a gambling standpoint, head coach, quarterback, kicker. And for those of us that liked Atlanta a little bit this weekend and liked what we saw in weeks 1 and 2, you know, Sungway Koo, I believe, who was the other kicker, right?
Correct.
Was great maybe a year and a half ago. But your point is so well taken. It is such an important position. And even when you look at the Patriots, Borregales, maybe he's the guy, maybe not. I think he has a better chance to be the guy than not. But your point is so well taken. You see extra points missed all day in this league now. And it is fascinating when you talk about the skill set, because they are required to do a lot more different things and have that leg in different positions and be a little more eclectic.
Well, Jay, also, you know, I mentioned earlier about this Patriots offense trying to grow together. The kicker's a part of it. You know, he's a part of the scoring unit. He's a part of the offense. That's a guy in Borregales that you hope kind of picks it up. And I don't think they're gonna try to spook him by like bringing in a veteran and putting him on the practice squad or anything like that. I think they believe in the kid, and I think they'll let him go out there and do his thing and make mistakes or make kicks. Just quickly, I know that our lead story was the Red Sox. Just quickly on the MLB playoff picture, Detroit is in a series with Cleveland. That is, they're going to play tonight. They've got Scooble listed as the starter on MLB.com. I don't know about that. Maybe they just didn't update it. I don't know. But the Red Sox are going to play a series in Toronto. Giolito against Gausman tonight. And then, as we mentioned, it's Detroit and Boston to kind of end the regular season. A lot on the line for Detroit. Good to know, Jay, that the Red Sox are going to have to pay attention to the very last game until the very last game of the regular season, because they're playing a team that's trying to win a division and is sinking very quickly in quicksand.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. And I know we're going to get to week 4 quickly, but I like the fact that the Red Sox are going to need to play some competitive baseball this last week, because I do think all the stars need to be aligned if they're going to make a run. And so we've talked about a lot. I think having a really good last week, now they're going to need to have a good last week because they're not necessarily punched in. So I think they have a better chance to maybe make a run because they're going to have to play well this week to punch their ticket.
And Toronto still needs to clinch as well. Great job in the show notes by Cody. Boston is going to roll out Giolito, Bayo, and Crochet. On the other side in Toronto, they get Gausman, Scherzer, and Bieber. So very competitive pitching matchups, and Red Sox are going to have to play this thing out. Sunday the 28th is the last day of the regular season, so everybody's got about 6 games left when it is all said and done. All right, let's head to week 4 of the old NFL season. And Jay, do you want to start with Thursday night here? Arizona is -1.5 at home against Seattle. Seattle has looked way better than I thought they would to this point this year, Jay.
Well, I love going through these. I haven't paid too much time going through these, but I'll try to look at some of these from a gambling standpoint. I agree. You know, you and I like talking shit about Sam Darnold, and most of it's real, and a little bit of it is for fun. But, you know, when he was coming out of college at USC, Colin Cowherd was very bullish on this kid. And I don't know what the future is for Sam Darnold, right? You see what Baker Mayfield's really done nicely for himself coming out of that draft. But I root for Sam Darnold, despite think he can be very shaky. But yeah, I believe a lot of what they're doing in Seattle. James Conner going down for Arizona, broken ankle, is an absolutely enormous injury. He's a very unique back. I think he fits that system well. This is a pick'em game. You know, gosh, it's creeping 2 days away. I probably lean home team there with Arizona coming off a loss, but that's a layoff. That guy got no real strong feel either way.
No, I'm with you. It's a layoff. If I have to pick, I'm taking the points and going Seattle. given the way that they played the last 2 weeks. Pittsburgh and Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, did look pretty good. I don't think, Rodgers, to me, Rodgers has not lost it. He's just, what he is? He's at the Brady stage of his life now. You got to protect him even more than usual. Yes, he can move around, but that arm is still, he can whip it, man.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think he had some moments, but he is very slow to me for himself, right? He does not look like the same player. And in terms of the Brady comparisons, Brady, I've said this over and over, is more like a specialist, just far more equipped to play later in his career, given your points about him moving in that tight pocket. But Aaron Rodgers looks like a limited player to me. Pittsburgh, to me, is kind of lucky to be 2-1, frankly. The Patriots outplayed them a lot. In terms of this Minnesota, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, look at it this way. The Patriots turned it over 5 times, and it was tied at 14 in the fourth quarter. That kind of shows you that Pittsburgh did miss opportunities, as did New England. But Minnesota, without J.J. McCarthy, I think Minnesota played the right team at the right time last week. But with a backup quarterback, I'm not believing in Minnesota going on the road with playing their second-string QB and getting a win.
Well, they're the designated favorite because the game is in Dublin, Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. So
that's right.
I mean Minnesota at this point just because the Steelers haven't impressed me. But
they're in Rooney land. They're in Rooney land. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, one of the, I think it was Art Rooney II was like the ambassador to Ireland or something like that.
Correct. So anyway, I lean Minnesota there. We'll see what happens. Eagles at Tampa Bay. We didn't get to this earlier, but I tell you what, man. Baker Mayfield, I used to hate on Baker a little bit. For my money, I could watch him play all day. He's so fun to watch. I love when he has to get out of the pocket because he doesn't run that much. But dude is so tough, so durable. Emeka Boca jumps off the page to me. So probably lean toward taking the 3 points there. But Philadelphia, man, they're world champions for a reason.
Yeah, I would go Philly only because it's Philly. They win close games, but as long as Baker Mayfield is not the starting quarterback of your favorite football team, he's a ton of fun to watch. I'm with you.
That's hilarious. I like that. Tampa Bay is banged up on the offensive line, so that could haunt them against Jalen Carter and others. Moving on, Chargers -6 at the Giants. Any thoughts there, Andrew?
Yeah, the Giants just have nothing. They have no firepower. They have no feel. They have no identity. It's almost like they're just waiting to lose. Russell Wilson is mad overrated in many, many ways. I don't think the Chargers miss here. I really don't. I think Harbaugh makes sure to drive home to those guys. It doesn't matter that they're 0-3 and we're riding high. I don't think this is going to be a Green Bay situation where the Chargers are like, we're 3-0. We don't have to show up.
Totally agree with all of that. What's really interesting to me when I look at the Giants quarterback room, and we talked about this early this season, right? It's like Jameis Winston, and frankly, I think Jackson Dart, I don't know if he's quite ready, but he should be getting the football. But Jameis Winston is a locker room galvanizer, and Russell Wilson's the opposite, right? Don't you feel like Russell Wilson just sucks the juice out of the room? Yeah. He's on an island, man. He's not like a galvanizing force where people go ahead.
He's A-Rod. He's A-Rod. He's a phony. If you met Russell Wilson, you'd be like, yeah, that guy's a phony.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little bit like some of the A-Rod stuff that people used to say about him. And even if he isn't, he kind of gives that off a little bit. And yeah, I'm with you on Russell Wilson. I'm out on that guy.
Giants defensive front still really fun to watch. So I think that could be an interesting game to watch. Chargers now without Najee Harris. So Marion Hampton, I think probably a good position for him to step up.
From the Chargers standpoint, look at their left tackle. They moved Joe Alt from right to left tackle. It's what we hope Bill Campbell turns into someday.
I'll leave that there. Saints +16.5 at the Buffalo Bills. I'm happy in all of my survivors. I have the Buffalo Bills still available to me. Hard for me to imagine the Saints being competitive there, but I'm not going to look much at that point spread. Browns +8.5 at the Detroit Lions. And I'll just start before I get your take on this game. I'm so happy for Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. I was one of those people. And I feel like an idiot, oh, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, you're losing your coordinators, you're losing some pieces or whatever. But there's a big piece they didn't have last year, Aiden Hutchinson, that's back. Huge win last night at Baltimore when a lot of people thought Baltimore was going to get it done there. So
yeah, that offensive line for the Lions kicked ass against Baltimore. They moved guys around. That's the best part of their football team. I think they could do that to Cleveland. Here's the thing with Cleveland, they played close this year. So that's why that 8.5 has got me just a little twisted. But hey, I'm with you. I thought the Lions would really struggle. They did in week 1, but they bounced back fabulously the last 2 weeks.
And what I will say, Gresh, just to mention the Survivor contest, because I like getting your help quickly, right? So for me, don't you think I should peek at the Lions here in Survivor? I know there's a lot of implications for the future of the season and future value, etc. But obviously I like the Bills, but really hard for me to imagine the Lions losing this football game. Do you agree?
No, I'm with you. I don't think they lose it. You could probably use the Lions in a little bit of a better spot. Hey, in terms of Survivor, the game right underneath, Washington and Atlanta, I have zero faith in Atlanta. Washington has played good football. To me, Washington, I know they're, -2.5. I think they're very live for Survivor this week because it feels like Atlanta is kind of sinking. Atlanta just lost 30-0 to stinky-ass Carolina.
Well, and it's a good, you're looking to zig while others zag. So the Commanders with a 2.5 point spread obviously depends on who's starting at quarterback, but does it, right? It really did. I wish I'd put more money on Washington this week because Mariota is a nice fit. We talk a lot about having a backup that has the same skill set as your starter. But yeah, I hear you. I like Washington there as we move along. And these are first instincts. We love coming at you on Tuesday morning, just giving you a feel. What else we got there? Bone marrow after Washington, Atlanta.
Oh,
the Texans.
The toilet bowl, Tennessee and Houston. What has happened to Houston in your opinion, Jay?
It's a great question. Dare I say that they haven't turned the page on last season and continue to sort of struggle. I understand they won a playoff game last season, but it just wasn't a good year, right? And sometimes I don't love the body language out of CJ Stroud when things aren't going great, but didn't catch a lot of that Texans Jaguars game in week 3. So maybe a little ill-prepared to answer your questions, but I do like the Texans to find a way to get their first win of the season at home against the Titans.
Yeah, I don't think Houston is what they were defensively, and offensively they got to punch a running back. And I know they got Nick Chubb, and he ended up scoring a big touchdown for them along the way these last 2 weeks, but there just isn't there's no pop or juice to their offense right now. It feels like there's no explosiveness in the run game whatsoever. We touched on New England and Carolina. Is that a 5.5? Yeah, it is. So it's Patriots -5.5 against the Panthers. I think the Patriots win the game, but that feels like a big number for this team right now.
It does. It's a really interesting game coming off what both teams went through in week 3. You know what I mean? Carolina, certainly you have a chance to go to 0-3 against an Atlanta team who's coming in playing some pretty good football despite being 1-1, and then you win 30-0. That plane ride is going to have some good mojo on it, I would think, coming up to New England. I think the Patriots, unless they can fix some of the turnover issues and clean those up, I think they could be ripe for even an upset here. I just still think the Patriots aren't quite ready. We talk about just finding different ways to lose games, and I don't really believe in them. Yeah, I would certainly take the points at first look here.
Yeah, points at first look. I know Cody said, hey, this might be one of the weeks to consider the Patriots in Survivor because I think Carolina is god awful. I thought the Colts going to be god awful. They're not. They're 3-0. They're going to head to LA to take on the Rams. And my disdain for McVay and how overrated I think the guy is. But I think this is the spot where the Colts kind of get welcomed back to the reality of the NFL in 2025.
So I agree with you there. And I think especially given, we talk a lot from a gambling standpoint about the previous week and how you react to that. And for me, the Rams really doing a lot of good things at Philadelphia. Gotta like them to sort of come home and handle their business. But the Colts are the 1-3-0 team that really hasn't been in a close game, blowing everybody out. they really do a lot of nice things. And Jonathan Taylor, does disappear in some people's minds sometimes, but I think he's leading the league in all-purpose yards. Like, he could be a problem. I think that's interesting. And I just want to say a couple things about the Colts schedule, right? Because getting off to that 3-0 start, right? We both think they're going to lose to the Rams here, but they're 3-1. Assuming, right? Next two games, home to Vegas, home to Arizona. Okay. Pretty winnable. Then you go at the Chargers, tough game, but then home to Tennessee, at Pittsburgh, home to Atlanta, and then a bye. So I do think for this Colts team in a division that's not great, I think they have a great chance even losing here to still be something. And when you said you didn't expect the Colts to be good, I know I've told you I've always been higher on Daniel Jones than most, but were you really low on the Colts coming into this season?
Yeah, I thought Shane Steichen was likely to be the second coach fired after old Mike McDaniel down there in Miami. Yeah, no, this is shocking to me that they're 3-0. If Daniel Jones played well and they were 1-2 and were competitive, that to me would make sense in terms of the Colts. But the fact that Daniel Jones is playing this well, see, I just think that the Rams are going to look at it and say, think of Daniel Jones on the other side. Force him to throw the ball 50 times and we'll be fine. Yeah. But I'm just not. Yeah, I was not big on the Colts. McCorkle Jones is 2-0 with the 49ers. They're in prime position as they're hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars, who find themselves at 2-1. Jags being 2-1 surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly had great opportunities to win in week 2 when Joe Burrow went out, so certainly could be 3-0. And I do think I didn't catch a lot of that Jacksonville-Houston game, but when you got a Texans team coming in at 0-2, a team that's been in the postseason the last couple of years, like Liam and the boys found a way to get a win there. Mac Jones has done enough there. I think that he would be very exposed as a starting quarterback throughout a whole campaign. There were talks of Brock Purdy perhaps being ready, but the 49ers looking at 3-0 with not a very difficult fourth place schedule from last season. I like the home team there quite a bit at first glance. That'd be one of the teams I'll be looking to maybe play in the million contest. I like the 49ers regardless of who's at quarterback.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like what Liam and the Jags are doing and building, but this is, you're going on the road, you're going across the country, and you're playing a mature football team. You're playing a team who has been there, done that, been to the Super Bowl, lost the Super Bowl, lost tough NFC championship games. They're playing a team that has gone through a lot. And then the 425 matchup, Baltimore rolls into Kansas City. When it comes to the AFC, this is a massive game now. Not only because the head-to-head was supposed to matter with Baltimore and Kansas City, but both of them with 2 losses. Who would have thought that one of the prohibitive favorites in the AFC would be 1-3 after the first month?
Amazing, Gresh. And what the Detroit Lions did for all of us last night is make this game so much more compelling, a game that would have already been compelling, because the bottom line is one of these teams emerging at 1-3. Gosh, that's an uphill climb in terms of hoisting a trophy, right? I think both teams could emerge from 1-3 and make the postseason, but I think this game is absolutely fascinating. I like the Ravens quite a bit as of today, Gresh. I just think they're a far better football team, and if they stop fumbling, really, they very well could be 3-0. I think the Chiefs are gonna have quite a grind this season to even make the postseason. I really do.
Yeah, I think Baltimore uses their best asset, which is their physicality. They should be able to go in there and get a win. Anything else, friend? Because I know I got to. I forgot we have other games. There's the Bears and the Raiders, and then the Packers and the Cowboys. Oh baby, let me tell you. If there's a team that I think is winning this week, forget the spread, Green Bay ain't losing to Dallas.
I agree, and we really don't need to talk about that Bears-Raiders game, although that will be a game that I look at because I think it'll be an interesting. But Code, hold on, I wanted to see that. I agree with you, Green Bay. After what happened last week,
Yup.
The idea that they're going to go in and not win that football game with no CeeDee Lamb, I hear you there.
Hey, you think Micah Parsons is going to go in there and just have an average game?
Exactly.
Not a chance in hell. And Jeff Hapley will make sure that Micah will have a hell of a game. Boy, if there's one team I feel really good about this week and just getting a win straight up, it's Green Bay.
Because
of the spite and malice factor with Micah Parsons thrown.
And like, I don't believe in Dak Prescott or anyone else in that Cowboys locker room to get them collectively in the right space to be like, we're going to go get Micah. We're going to, like, I just don't.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you know? No, so, I'm with you. Monday night doubleheader, not very good. Jets, Dolphins, which is putrid. And then the Bengals with no Joe Burrow at Denver. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We talk about some like the 2 Monday night games, some don't. This is probably a perfect spot where you're glad you have a couple games to go back and forth between. Maybe for those that like fantasy football, some fun opportunities there. But these games are almost not worth talking about right now, other than I think the Broncos have a chance to sort of right the ship a little bit and get to 2-2 and maybe sort of gain some momentum, because they were really a team that, Sean Payton talking to them like one, in preseason, like, this is really a Super Bowl contending team. Haven't really shown it on Sundays yet.
Very true. I think Denver handles business unless Cincinnati clears cap space and makes a trade for Kirk Cousins or someone like that. To me, their season is just going to drown. Hey, just got a little text message from somebody who said to me, I think Gonzo could be ready this week, but he may not go, as an indicator of, we can give him one more week because of this opponent.
So I love, and honestly, who cares if Carolina wins? That's what I want to hear, right? The last thing I want is to go a week late rather than a week too soon with Gonzalez. He's so important. And I'll tell you right now, like that Pittsburgh game, even though, I mean, can you imagine if he was out there? Aaron Rodgers would not have looked as good as he did with.
Same for the Raider game. Yeah. I mean, you can argue that maybe Gonzo is the reason the Patriots are not sitting at 3-0, because it's been close. In every game.
I know you got to get out of here, but I'll really quickly say, like, in terms of Chris Gonzalez, love to have him out there on Ted McMillan and neutralize that one sort of big threat. He's been pretty nice for Carolina. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So we'll see what the Patriots do. I think if he's ready, he's in there. So I think if he has a good week of practice, it sort of trends the other way. But I think right now there's that, hey, if they feel like they don't need him, maybe they won't play him type deal up there in Foxborough. All right, that's it for Gas. Great job by our guy Cody Merrow. Follow him on Twitter at Cody_Merrow. I am at The Real Gresh. He is at Boston Anik. Make sure you give us the follows and check us back here next week for another edition of Gas.
Hit him straight.